In just 5 years, China has gone from making that to making these. Now, with that rate of progress, where are they going to be in 5 years' time?
And this, dear viewers, is the Yangwang U9. Now, the stats for this vehicle are completely bonkers, off the charts.
Sweet Mary, Mother of Jesus!
It's just short of 1,300 horsepower.
I only saw this thing for the first time a few moments ago, and already I'm in love.
It can do 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in around 2 seconds. It's got a top speed of 186 miles an hour.
It's just insanity!
Truly bonkers Yangwang U8.
My God.
That is a bonkers electric supercar. The challenge from China is mind-boggling for the automotive industry. It really is.
Well, that does take us back to our original question, actually. So, in 5 years' time, everybody will be driving Chinese cars. Yes, we probably will.
We are doomed.
The Chinese automotive industry can be described in a simple analogy: our rocket launch to the moon. The decades leading up to the 1960s saw slow progress in aircraft design. Aircraft retained their piston engines, propellers, straight wings, and remained subsonic aircraft. But that small improvement by small improvement path of progress quickly changed to exponential growth and capability with the advent of jet propulsion and the beginnings of large-scale rocket propulsion. Decades of R&D to suddenly launch for extraterrestrial lands. The Chinese automotive industry is now ready for its own launch to extraterrestrial lands, or rather terrestrial lands, as it's looking to enter the American car market. It's for this reason that the federal government, and other federal governments around the world, have scrambled to impose tariffs on foreign-made, specifically Chinese-made EVs, and also incentivizing the domestic production of EVs. And it's in this context where this interview clip with the largest EV producer in America is even more confusing.
And we don't need the $7,500 tax credit. I would say, honestly, I would just can this whole bill. Don't pass it. That's my recommendation.
If you think about also how this affects your competitors, is that impact how some of your view on this?
I mean, maybe they need it. I don't know. But I think just generally, I'm in favor of deleting subsidies.
Why? Why would the CEO of America's largest EV producer want to remove the subsidies that made him money? By the end of this video, you might see his comment with a different perspective. Hello people of the internet, I'm Nico, made in America, and in this video I want to tell the story of how Chinese EVs became better than American EVs, and why that justifies federal subsidies. Industrious China has a serious problem. Thanks to the rapid growth of various industries throughout the 80s and 90s, air pollution remains a major concern for the Chinese government. Today, some 2 million lives are lost every year in China because of air pollution, 10 years after China's War on Air Pollution announcement. Of course, the horrendous air quality is in large part due to one industry in particular. Take a look at any economic superpower around the world and you will see that they all have one thing in common: a robust automotive industry. America, Germany, Japan, and present-day China are all good examples of this. Thanks to the complexity and wide range of materials and technology needed to make a car, having a large domestic auto industry tends to grow a country's economy immensely. The trouble for China 40 years ago was that they simply didn't have a comparable automotive industry. While the automotive industry in China was already growing during this time, the government was about to supercharge its growth to make a century's worth of progress in just a few decades. In 1994, China designated the auto industry as a so-called pillar industry. Grossly oversimplified, this meant that rather than funding a bunch of different individual industries, the Chinese government would pour huge sums of money into the automotive industry, which would then fuel the growth of other industries that supply the auto industry. This narrative of the Chinese government paying out the auto industry is not uncommon. In fact, with the exception of a few companies like BYD and NIO, most car makers in China are state-owned. This means that while American car companies have to take out their own money in order to expand, Chinese car companies can effectively run at a loss, which is in large part why they've been able to expand so quickly compared to legacy manufacturers like Ford and General Motors. All that is to say, when the recession around 2008 finally came to an end, the trajectories of the American auto industry and the Chinese auto industry would split. Ooh, transition. At this point, the Chinese auto industry had spent the better part of its history, sometimes illegally, copying Western car designs. Now, the Chinese could have just kept copying Western designs, sold them domestically, and enjoyed massive profits. But copying a design inherently means that the Chinese industry would always be a step behind. The trouble was that from China's perspective, there was no good reason to overtake Western car makers, specifically when it came to cars with internal combustion engines. If you stop and consider how impractical the internal combustion engine is, needing hundreds and hundreds of parts to turn linear motion into rotational motion, it seems like a no-brainer to instead focus on a simpler design like an electric motor. Couple that with the appalling air quality in the cities, thanks in no small part to the fossil fuel burning vehicles, and China's only logical option for surpassing Western rivals was to focus on electric vehicles. The only question being how to power those electric motors. By 2009, companies like BYD had been developing their battery technology for well over a decade, and combined with a new state program called 10 Cities, 1,000 Cars, China was now set to leapfrog Western car makers.
After 4 long, tense days, we've reached a historic moment in this election. We can now project the winner of the presidential race. CNN projects Joseph R. Biden Jr. is elected the 46th president of the United States, winning the White House and denying...
2 years after taking office, the Biden administration pushed the Inflation Reduction Act through Congress, one of the most expensive and comprehensive bills to ever make it through this disorganized mess. Inside the 274-page document, there are a number of subsidies and incentives seemingly copied from the Chinese 10 Cities, 1,000 Vehicles program, from customer incentives to buy EVs to funding for charging stations. In an ironic turn of events, America is now copying China, and for good but admittedly different reasons. To explain those reasons, though, I first need to explain how America was evolving during this time. So, while China was busy forcing its entire auto industry to pivot in a new direction, America's free market also gave light to some EV manufacturers. And while the transition has been much slower compared to China, companies like Tesla have shown that it's not necessary to beat the status quo to be successful, but that you can instead open a whole new market sector. This has naturally led to more EV startups, as well as legacy automakers trying to capitalize on this new market, with two big problems. The first problem can be seen here. This is the Mercedes factory in Vance, Alabama. It's about a half hour from Tuscaloosa, where I'm from, and this is the first source of problems for EVs in America, and why they're worse than their Chinese counterparts. Mercedes built a brand new battery manufacturing facility here a few miles down the road from its existing factory, costing $1 billion to make. Now, because Mercedes, like any company, needs to make money in order to survive, the cost of the factory will be factored into the cost of the EVs produced. This is a large reason why most EVs around the world are so expensive. However, this is a problem that Chinese car companies do not have. In part because of the unique relationship between most Chinese car companies and their government, along with the decade head start Chinese car companies have, the cost of the assembly plants and battery manufacturing facilities has been effectively paid off. This allows them to lower the cost of their EVs to marginally above their production costs, and it can be seen plain as day with this. This is the BYD Seagull, a Nissan Leaf-sized hatchback with a range of up to 250 miles, but a starting price less than a third of the Nissan Leaf. An $11,000 EV with a 250-mile range would be unrivaled if sold in the United States, and it's for this reason that Western nations have made big policy changes. While there are plenty of environmental benefits to EVs, namely air quality in cities, lower carbon emissions in the long term, and noise pollution, the benefits of EV subsidies and tariffs on foreign-made EVs does more than just protect the environment. It protects the jobs of thousands and thousands of Americans.
We don't need the $7,500 tax credit. I would say, honestly, I would just can this whole bill. Don't pass it. That's my recommendation.
Say we actually took Elon Musk's word and decided to eliminate all EV subsidies and remove the tariff on Chinese-made EVs. What would happen? Well, for starters, you would suddenly have a ton of electric vehicles undercutting American EVs by thousands of dollars, making it impossible to sell American-made EVs. This would of course mean that the billions of dollars sunk into making new battery manufacturing facilities and altering the assembly lines would immediately be a waste, costs that some companies could not recover from. All of the jobs that were created for constructing these facilities would disappear, and all of the factory workers set to work there would also be jobless, so almost immediately we would lose tens of thousands of jobs. It's for that reason that we have a 100% tariff on imported Chinese EVs. Now, with the tariff in place, it would make sense that Chinese companies looking to expand to foreign markets, the US specifically, would then build factories here to bypass this tariff, which they still can do, but with a decade head start to develop battery technology and assembly processes, legacy automakers currently would likely not fare that well. Either they would have to sell their EVs at too high a cost to compete with the Chinese automakers because they're still trying to recoup their investments, or they sell them at a competitive price with no hope of recouping the billions invested in new manufacturing facilities. You might suggest then that legacy automakers should just stick with internal combustion engine cars. But even there, well, first off, with BYD selling an $11,000 electric vehicle with 250 miles of range and no gasoline costs and little to no maintenance costs, most of the subcompacts that are currently not yet hybrids will be gone almost overnight. And with so many car companies making hybrids to get better fuel economy, it will be very interesting to see what happens as Chinese car companies also have very competitive offerings. So then we will be left with what? Pickup trucks? Sure, it's a big market, but regardless of the brand, that is a lot of downsizing, which means thousands more jobs will be lost.
Now, the stats for this vehicle are completely bonkers, off the charts. It's just short of 1,300 horsepower.
I only saw this thing for the first time a few moments ago, and already I'm in love.
It can do 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in around 2 seconds. It's got a top speed of 186 miles an hour.
It's insanity!
Truly bonkers Yangwang U8.
My God.
That is a bonkers electric supercar. The challenge from China is mind-boggling for the automotive industry. It really is.
Without these tariffs, Chinese automakers would already be here destroying the industry that employs millions of Americans. And the subsidies for manufacturers, for buyers, and for the infrastructure are the only way to ensure that the industry has a fighting chance for when the Chinese car makers do start selling their offerings here. The only exception to that may be Tesla, who, like many Chinese manufacturers, have been developing their battery tech since the mid-2000s, and is likely the only manufacturer who could compete with them because they already do. Tesla already produces and sells their cars in China, so Elon knows that Tesla can compete with Chinese car makers, and here especially since he has the advantage of a great charging system for his customers. And since Tesla doesn't even qualify for the $7,500 tax credit anymore, and still outsells all of the competition, eliminating the subsidies for EVs would really just eliminate the chance for other automakers to compete. At least that's my theory on why he said this.
I'm literally saying get rid of all subsidies.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more videos like this where I explain how the automotive industry affects our lives and vice versa, then hit the subscribe button. It's free and it helps me out more than you might think. If you really enjoyed this video and would like to support the channel and make sure that I can continue making these videos, I do have a Patreon page linked down in the description where for like $3 a month you can watch these videos ad-free plus a few other benefits. Until next time, people of the internet, peace out. Yes.